I gotta say that I think this is the most popular what if I have going on my channel right now. The Sinnoh region has been one that has been very divisive among Pokemon fans. Everyone feels like Ash should have won this region, but he didn't because they had to sandbag him for part 5. And overall, it seems like all of you guys are welcome to the changes that I'm making to it. So without further ado, let's get into part 3. I promise you, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to like. I hope you enjoy. Alright, we are meeting back up with the group as they are arriving in style back in Hearthome City. Ash has come back in an attempt to battle the gym, but then he finds out that the leader Fantina is still gone on a mission to develop a new battle style. After that, Brock gets shut down by Paris, a world famous Pokestylist. Dawn goes on to star in the Hearthome Collection, a Pokemon fashion show. This is something that'll help her develop a style to become a top coordinator. Then after meeting Edna Mode from The Incredibles and a stuck-up fashion designer named Coco, Dawn then learns the ways of her senpai, and we move on to the next episode. But before we do, I want to discuss why I think this episode is important. Here, while Ash is part of it, the main focus is Dawn, and she learns a valuable lesson in that sometimes less is more, a problem she's been struggling with finding balance in her last few contests. I think it's a great lesson for someone who wants to be a top coordinator, as they needed to know that each Pokemon is different, and it's up to the coordinator to identify and highlight those differences. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. So, with no gym battle in sight for Ash, our heroes choose to move on to Celestic Town and the site of the next Pokemon contest, as Ash is still heavily involved with the contest scene here. Along the way, our group comes across a squad of Psyduck having a really bad day. After helping them clear out some muck from their local water supply, the team can move on to the next task, which is camping it up. After being contacted by Professor Rowan, the group has decided to head to the Thornberry Research Facility on Mount Coronet. Here they intend to spend a week in a school to learn about various types of Pokemon. Now, I'm gonna be honest. When I originally watched this arc over 10 years ago, I thought it was a huge waste of time. I mean, come on. They paired Ash with a Raichu, the evolved form of his starter. This was the greatest waste of time in the mid part of the second season of Sinnoh. So, we're gonna change it, of course, so that Brock, Dawn, and Ash can all take something away here. So now we get some returning rivals, like Conway Creepy and Jessie, looking to improve their self-knowledge of Pokemon. So with this, we're going to have to change the structure of the camp to reflect the subjects for each of our main characters instead of teams. For simplicity's sake, we're going to name these the battle subject, the contest subject, and the medical subject. Now, to further the impact of the time we spend here, we're going to have each of these subjects taught by an expert in their field. For the battle subject, we're going to have the current champions of Hoenn and Sinnoh themselves. These two have completely different battle styles, and with both of them overseeing the battle class, both Conway and Ash will benefit greatly from it. Next, for the contest class, we will have the two most recent winners of the Grand Festival being Robert from the Hoenn region and Soledad from the Kanto region. These two will provide the best possible insight to become top coordinators, with Dawn and Jessie hanging on their every word. And finally, for the medical class, we have Dr. Moss and Abby from the Hoenn region. Brock is already familiar with these two, so he will be able to easily understand their training and methods. Now, for the sake of time, we won't focus on Brock's group too much. He spends his time learning about medicines he can make from scratch on the road to help him and his friends. Now, with Dawn, we will spend some time here. Her and Jessie develop somewhat of a respect for each other when they realize that each of them have something to offer. Dawn realizes that even though she's always behind, Jessie manages to stay just on the heels of her contest rival. That's why she was able to win her last contest. No one expected her to win, and she took advantage of it. While Jessie learns that even though Dawn is a twerp, she does have natural talent when it comes to contest battles. It may take some time, but when she finds the perfect rhythm, Dawn cannot be beat. They both end up as the top of their class at the end of all this. And lastly, there's Ash. In the original, he was paired with the Raichu and developed a rivalry with the girl Angie, who was paired with the Monferno. While I would say this would be great if Ash didn't already have a Monferno, so we're going to have to scratch that and replace it with a last-minute entry. Someone who's been watching from the shadows the whole time. Paul, he's here, and while Ash isn't that excited to see him, but the feeling is mutual. On the other hand, Cynthia is really interested in seeing how these two young trainers react again. Now, let's not forget Conway. He's here too, and there's a reason why I want to stress his importance. Conway does whatever it takes to get inside information on his opponent. He analyzes their battle styles and their rosters of Pokemon so he can come up with the best strategy he can. He's kind of like Paul in that regard, but with less results. Now, for the next change to this class, each person will be placed with a 3-stage evolution family line. They will have access to the line for the whole week. This will allow them to know a certain Pokemon very well, but they can only get access to the next stage of their respective evolution line if they have gained enough points from doing tasks in the class, like winning battles or completing challenges. Now, for the Pokemon that the three will receive, Conway will get the Gibble line, Ash will have the Elekid line, and Paul will have the Chimchar line. Now, the reason I'm giving these lines to them specifically is because it offers trainer exposure to the line that will have a greatest impact on how they understand it in the future. At the end of the week, Conway will know everything about the Gible line, its strengths, weaknesses, attitude, potentials, and personalities. The same goes for Ash and Paul as well. You can believe now that Paul has had exposure to the ace of Ash's team, he will use this information in any way that he can. But remember, he also gets exposure to Monferno and an Infernape. That means that he's going to have much more information than he would have had in the original to battle Ash with. But to wrap things up, at the end of the week, Conway will stand in third, as his less honest ways cost him in the points ranking system. Ash will end in second, as his methods of doing things takes time. He didn't start to show results in his evolutionary line until much later in the week, while Paul will take a commanding lead in first place with over 100 points difference between him and Ash. This is due to one major factor. Paul doesn't dick around. He knows his goals, and he's all about the most efficient way in executing them, wasting no time getting the best results out of his Pokemon. But out of this, Ash does come to an understanding about Paul a little bit more, as he can see the results of Paul's methods in real time. He still doesn't agree with it, but he understands it. With that, we move on from the Camp Thornberry arc into the next episode. Now we enter playing the leveling field. This episode is very important, as it's where Ash finally meets the leader of the Hearthome Gym, Fantina. He's been itching for a battle with her, but she claims she hasn't returned to the gym because she wants to get stronger, the same way other trainers do when they return to her gym after losing a battle to her. She became a top coordinator, now seeks to develop a battle style like no other. Ash wants to put it to the test, so he challenges her to a battle. Fantina accepts, with the rules that the battle is over when one side's team is unable to battle. Substitution will be allowed. Now, we do have to change one thing about this battle. Ash has Monferno here, and Ash has been in a lot more contest battles in this story, so he should be able to handle Fantina more efficiently, right? Right? Well, actually no. You see, the thing that Fantina has going for her is she embraces the coordinator lifestyle into the Pokemon battles, to where up until this point, Ash has only been using the contest moves to strengthen his Pokemon. He hasn't actually been improving his battle style with the contests. Sure, he's copied a few of Dawn's moves, but he hasn't actually come up with anything original for his own Pokemon, and it reflects in the battle with Fantina, when her Drifloon sacks Buizel, lulls Monferno to sleep, then evolves in a Drifblim against Pikachu to control the battle and show Ash just how much he's going to have to improve if he wishes to get a badge from her gym. In the end, Ash loses pretty shamefully, but Fantina agrees to return to the Hearthome Gym for a rematch with Ash. So he's really got to do well in the next contest and really use everything he's learned from traveling with May and Hoenn and Dawn and Sinnoh to catch a win here. But on the flip side, Dawn isn't just going to lay down and let Ash take a contest victory, not since she's behind all of her other rivals when it comes to ribbons. Now we have a few episodes before the next contest, with the first being Doc Brock. Here we get to see Brock utilize his training from the camp to stock up at a pharmacy at the base of Mount Cornet, while Ash and Dawn work on their contest strategy. Dawn is making great progress with Bunnery, but Ash is having trouble focusing. He's so concerned about his battle with Fantina that he hasn't really done anything to prepare for the contest. So after doing chores that Brock assigned to them, Ash and Dawn focus on more training. It is here that Ash decides to use Spiritomb per the advice of Dawn. It really likes contest battles, and Ash wants to grow his bond with it, so this would be the perfect chance to do so. Dawn tells Ash that he needs to focus more on using the moves of his Pokemon to his advantage. Don't you remember what happened in the battle with Zoe? Fantina used her Magical Leaf not only to counter, but also to distract Zoe. This gave her the split-second moment she needed to capitalize and win the battle. That's what contest battles are all about, using the shock of your opponent to take advantage to make you and your Pokemon look good. Ash knows Dawn is right. He has to do more. The actual move's power is only part of it. Execution can make your move that much more impactful. So, while they wait for Brock to return, Ash and Dawn spend the remaining time developing ways to better display and highlight the actual attacks of their Pokemon. Ash works with Buizel, Monferno, and Spiritomb. Pikachu is forced to look after the other Pokemon until Brock returns, as it's still not welcome around Spiritomb. The episode ends when Pachirisu recovers from a sickness, and Brock insists on both Ash and Dawn learning First Aid just in case something like this happens again. The next episode is Battling the Generation Gap. In this episode, we see the group finally arrive in Celestic Town, where Dawn and Ash both hope to take part in the next Pokemon contest. Now, there is an important chain of events that actually happen here. Dawn ends up meeting an old rival of her mother's, Lila, the one coordinator she could never beat. And as it turns out, she is competing in the Celestic Town contest as she wishes to capture the feeling she had when she battled Dawn's mother so many years ago. In the main timeline, the duo end up battling it out in the finals, and Dawn ends up taking the win her mother never could. But here we have to change things a little, because we're adding Ash to the mix. He makes it to the top 8 with no problem, even winning his battle with Spiritomb. But then in the top 4, he gets matched up with Lila and her Delcatty. This battle is an important one for Ash, as he has been looking for a way to counter Fantina's Pokemon in his next gym battle with her. It's against Lila we start to see the beginnings of a familiar technique Ash will start to develop into something of his own contest style in the upcoming battles. Unfortunately, he does still lose here to Lila, and then Dawn goes on to win the whole thing. But something is not lost on Dawn. Ash is getting better at coordination battles. He keeps placing high in contests, which normally wouldn't be a problem, but she hasn't earned all 5 of the ribbons yet, and this could be a problem in the future. But let's not worry about that now and move on to the next episode, which is Losing Its Lustrous. This episode starts with a transport from Eterna City bringing the Adamant Orb to Celestic Town, but it's stolen by Team Galactic. Then we cut to Ash practicing a new defense that he's been thinking about, demonstrating his inspiration from the battles that he had with Dawn and Lila. Ambipom was the main inspiration of this defense. Ash really feels he's onto something. He's not ready to leave Celestic Town until he has it down. So we cut to the Pokemon Center where Brock is getting his Mac on when he doesn't feel a disturbance in the Force. Croagunk is focused on something, but what still remains to be seen. After learning that Cynthia will be at the research center, the group decides to head over to say hi. After being taunted by Cynthia's grandmother in his inability to beat Paul or her granddaughter, the real importance of this episode is revealed when we see Team Galactic making its move in the background, while a much more important character, Cyrus, who is known and trusted by all, becomes known. When once again Brock is expecting to be subdued by his froggy partner, is distracted by something much more important. The episode concludes with Team Galactic making its presence being known, boxing in our heroes. Croagunk is incapacitated by Saturn's Toxicroak, and things are looking bleak for everyone involved. This leads us right into the very next part and the conclusion of this mini arc, Double Team Turnover. Here, we see Cynthia taking no chances with the full offense against Team Galactic, with her trademark Garchomp and a new member of her Pokemon team that we haven't seen before, Gastrodon. This is important, as now Ash has seen 2 members of Cynthia's championship team, but we will have to save that revelation for much later. There are, however, some things that we have to change, which is the Pokemon that Ash uses to oppose Team Galactic. Normally, we would see Pikachu and Chimchar here, but Ash has Monferno in our story, which will still make an appearance. We also have to include another member of Ash's team, Gabite. The reasoning here is because since the evolution of Gabite, both it and Monferno have become inseparable. Ash uses them frequently in tag battles, and the two do everything together. And Ash realizes that he doesn't have a better duo to pair up on his team than these two. However, there is one more reason that we need to interject Gabite here: Cynthia's Garchomp. It's Gabite's final stage of its evolution line. The power that Cynthia's Garchomp demonstrates here will be a big inspiration to Gabite, its own personal goals and development. Now in the normal episode, Team Rocket interferes and basically turns half of the episode into useless filler, so we're just going to exclude that from the equation here, because I have something better in mind. Back to the point to when our heroes are trying to clear a path through all the Golbat. Ash orders a Volt Tackle from Pikachu. This prompts Toxicroak to attack. In the normal timeline, Chimchar got in the way of Pikachu. Here, the same thing will happen, but it will be Monferno. At first, the Poison Jab does have some adverse effects on Monferno, nearly knocking it out, causing Ash and Pikachu to rush to its side. Meanwhile, Team Galactic are doing everything they can to take the Lustrous Orb by force, while a secret reserve team is outside of the museum planning a stealth attack. Brock rushes in to find Croagunk is down, as well as Monferno. Ash is doing his best at commanding Pikachu and Gabite to knock out as many Golbats as possible while making his way to the orb. But Saturn isn't going to just let this happen, ordering Toxicroak to get involved. At this point, Brock is in the process of treating Croagunk, allowing it to regain consciousness. He then attempts to do the same with Monferno, when it suddenly opens its eyes. They are glazed over in red, and the flame on its tail surges. Ash knows what this is, and it's not good. They're in a building full of artifacts, and if Monferno rampages, there's no telling what damage will be done. Its presence is felt throughout the room, capturing the attention of everyone, especially Cynthia and Cyrus. Monferno yells in rage. Then it sets its sight on someone across the room, Saturn and his Toxicroak. The Team Galactic admin just laughs, thinking that this will end the same way it did before, but he's sorely mistaken. Monferno is unlike anything he's ever battled before. It's savage in the attacks it's letting loose. In no time, it puts Toxicroak down. This battle was shamefully one-sided, but now that the focus on Monferno's rage is gone, it needs a new one, so it turns to everyone else. It doesn't matter who it hits, friend or foe. They all get a smackdown from the People's Champ. Unfortunately, this is just the distraction that Team Galactic needed, as Commander Jupiter and her team were able to use it as cover to steal the orb without being seen. It eventually takes Cynthia's Garchomp to end Monferno's rage, demonstrating even more of its prowess to Gabite. Later, after everything is settled, the Oddsirus bids farewell as he has other matters to attend to, while Cynthia gives him a strange look. It is then established that Team Galactic knows much more information about the legendary Pokemon Palkia and Dialga than Cynthia and her grandmother do. It is here that Ash, Brock, and Dawn had an encounter with the two deities of Sinnoh's ancient past in a place called Alamos Town. This catches Cynthia's attention. Ash tells her that they were pulled into another dimension to do battle with the two legendaries. The only thing that saved them was the help of a Pokemon called Darkrai and them activating the space-time towers to play the song Oracion. This whole story is hard for Cynthia to believe. Now, she's secretly going to go check it out. But after she takes care of one crucial detail that we, as the fans, are given. At the end of the episode, Cynthia is told that the next challenger for her championship title is ready, so she has to go defend it. Now, let's unpack this. What we are basically saying here is that even though trainers like Ash and Paul are currently challenging the gyms, there is already a challenger for Cynthia in the middle of the league season. This is a very important piece of information. This explains why Cynthia, as a champion here, is shown to have a higher strength than other champions of other seasons. This is also the first season of the Pokemon anime that the regional champion is active during the main part of the story. It really shows how much the Pokemon Company values Cynthia as a character. They really used her well in this season. They demonstrated that she was a champion who also had a life outside of battling, and when her region was in trouble, she stepped up to take part in the solution of the problem. Honestly, I feel like the champions that came before her and the ones that came after her all the way up until Pokemon Journeys never really felt like champions, just someone who holds a title. So, with this long part now safely behind us, we still have a lot more to cover. So let's get moving into our next episode. In a trainer and child reunion. Now this episode doesn't need to be a super long one, but it is important. Here we are introduced to Aaron, the second member of the Sinnoh Elite Four that's been introduced. We find out that he is the challenger for Cynthia's title, but more importantly, Ash learns that he is a bug type specialist, and his current Pokemon include Skorupi, Drapion, Vespiquen, and Aaron's first Pokemon, Beautifly. And more importantly, he gets an up-close look at all of them and what they can do. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get into the following episode, Aiding the Enemy. Here, we see the battle play out between Aaron and Cynthia, which Aaron gets wrecked, with Cynthia only revealing two of her Pokemon that we already know in Garchomp and Gastrodon. This is important, as it shows just how strong Cynthia is, only using two of her Pokemon to take out Aaron's full team of 6. And furthermore, Ash gets a chance to see Aaron's last two Pokemon. But we'll leave that for a future time, as there's one more event that happens in this episode. You see, Paul was present for the battle of Cynthia and Aaron, and after the match is over, we see Ash outside practicing his moves to battle Fantina. Paul can see this, confronting Ash about Monferno and its use of Blaze, but Paul becomes upset with Ash when he tells him that he doesn't want to focus on using Blaze. Another important interaction that happens here is between Paul and Brock. Brock tells Paul that he spoke with his brother Reggie, and he thinks that Paul's battle style is interesting, but he feels that Ash is starting to rub off on Paul. Then we get an interesting piece of backstory from Paul. He is upset with Reggie after he lost to Pyramid King Brandon and just deciding to give up on being a trainer. This to Paul is unacceptable. The fact that Reggie would give up everything and be okay with it is not something Paul can accept. And if all that already isn't a lot for our story, we still have the battle for Ash and Paul here. It's revealed that Paul's Murkrow evolved into a Honchkrow. This is a huge deal, as we already know that this is one of Paul's oldest Pokemon, so it will be powerful. Now for the change to this episode. Originally, Ash used Turtwig in this battle, which ended up evolving, with Ash still losing. But Ash doesn't have Turtwig here, so we need to have a replacement. I think the choice is actually an easy one, Staravia. The bird wants to test its skill against Paul's newest flying type, but the result will still end up being the same, with Staravia being overwhelmed by the new speed and power of Honchkrow, losing. But this does prompt Staravia and Ash to focus more on their training, as the two won't be bested by Paul and the big boss Pokemon again. Unfortunately though, with that change, we won't get the awesome interaction with Paul's Torterra, but it's a small sacrifice for the greatest story. Now with that, we move on to the next episode. Now let's see if I can finally say this without laughing. Berries busting out all over. Seriously, it took me like 5 tries to get that right. Anyway, this is the episode where we are introduced to Barry, the rival in the main series games. While he still has an impatient streak, he's billed as the ultimate Paul fanboy, while claiming that he will be the strongest trainer. The episode ends with Ash beating Barry in a 3-on-3 battle, which the only changes that we'll have here is Monferno instead of Chimchar and Spiritomb instead of Gliscor. After Ash wins, Barry claims that it was just luck, to which Ash replies to come watch him beat the gym leader that he couldn't. This then leads us into our next episode and the very first gym battle of this part, Shield with a Twist. The battle is one that Ash has been waiting for. All of his training has led to this. With Barry, Dawn, and Brock looking on, both Fantina and Ash make their first choices in Gengar and Buizel. Though this starts off with Ash on the receiving end, when it comes time for hypnosis, Ash has Buizel use the new technique they've been working on, which catches Gengar, knocking it to the ground. It is here that Fantina dubs Ash's strategy as the counter shield, which Ash is all for. The next exchange sees Buizel take a Nightshade, but Gengar was hit with a Water Pulse. In the end, even though Buizel was hit, Gengar took more damage, getting knocked out in the process. This frustrates Barry in the stands, but oh well. Ash then recalls Buizel to save it for later. Now comes Miss Magius. Normally, Ash would have used Chimchar here, but since he has Monferno, we're gonna make that change. But this still has a bit of a negative side. Now, Monferno has the fighting type, while Miss Magius primarily uses psychic type attacks. This battle makes it a little harder for Ash to take the win, as Monferno does take more damage being at a type disadvantage. But in the end, the Blazing Chimp still gets the win. Again, frustrating Barry in the stands. This leads into our major change for the episode. Normally Ash would recall Monferno here and send in Pikachu, but here, Ash will leave it in to face Drifblim. This does end up costing Ash Monferno. Now, why did I do this with Monferno, when in the original, Ash used Chimchar to win? The reason is actually simple. In the original timeline, Chimchar won 3 of his 8 badges, which showed that he was relying on it a little bit too much. Here, it will give us a chance to use somebody else to win this battle. So, with Monferno down, even though it did cause some damage, Ash sends back in Buizel. Unfortunately, it does meet the same fate, but it does cause some damage in the process, leading Ash to his final Pokemon. Now in the original, Pikachu was the 3rd Pokemon in the battle, and it lost pretty quickly. But here, we're going to use the newest member of Ash's team, Spiritomb. This is something I can see Ash doing, trying to beat Fantina at her own type. Though it would be a difficult start, Ash would prove here his ability to adapt in battle, using Spiritomb's newly learned Dark Pulse as a counter shield. Now, I think the real advantage that Ash would have here is the fact that even though he's only had Spiritomb for a short while, it is literally hundreds of years old. So I think the level would be a bit higher than Drifblim, giving it a natural power over its ghost opponent. This would allow Ash time to develop new strategies in the battle with it, which when you think about it, would be better to do here against a ghost specialist, as Ash could see a ghost specialist live in action. This would eventually result in Ash's victory, earning him his 5th badge of the Sinnoh region, the Relic badge. This also has an adverse effect on having Barry join a group temporarily so they can travel to Cantaloupe City for Ash's next badge. But Barry already won that badge, so he's only going for training on Iron Island. Also, side note, rather than being useless, Jessie actually earned her 2nd contest ribbon here, while Ash was earning his gym badge. And that wraps up the episode, leading in to our next adventure. After that, a filler episode happens that rushes the group to Cantaloupe City via blimp. That's only the really important part here. Then we end up in the next episode, Sleepless and pre-battle. Now, a few important things happen here. 1, Ash gets a little bit more exposure to Darkrai. Not much, but some. Ash learns that the Lunar Wings actually help counter nightmares, a very important piece of information for the not too distant future. 3, the group meets Cresselia, which after everything is said and done, gifts some Lunar Wings to our heroes for their help against Team Rocket. And 4th, Dawn's Swinub ends up evolving here, which will be important for later. I think it's very important to establish that the Darkrai here is different from the one that was in Alamos Town. With that, a few more episodes happen, like a Breed Stampede, which is only really important for one reason. Normally it would be here that Gliscor learns Fire Fang, but here we're going to have Gabite learn it instead, in the exact same fashion that Gliscor did. This is followed by Ancient Family Matters. This episode is really only important for one major reason. Ash finds out that Rorik of the Orbrick Gym is the son of Byron, the leader of the Cantaloupe Gym. But what is more important here is Ash gets a chance to see Byron's ace Pokemon, a Bastiodon. Now it makes sense when Rorik said that he was familiar with that Pokemon. Byron's strategy is shown here. Unlike his son, who embraces a pure offensive style with his fossil Pokemon, Byron uses a pure defensive style that he proves can even best Rorik's most powerful Pokemon, Rampardos. The episode ends with Ash formulating a strategy on how he will crack the iron defense of Byron. Now we enter our next episode and our 6th gym battle, dealing with defensive types. Ash looks to mount an all-out assault against Byron's massive defense. This will be tough, and we will have a lot of changes coming up. So let's get started. First up, Byron leads with his Bronzor, and here it has the ability Heat-Proof. Normally, Ash would use Chimchar, but he's got Monferno, so we'll use that. Now, I know Ash gets caught off guard by the Heat-Proof in the beginning, but I think with the added power from the evolution into Monferno, it would make the battle end much quicker than the original. And for those of you that are concerned with Bronzor's psychic typing, remember one thing: the battle with Fantina where Monferno had to deal with a Miss Magius, well, I think that due to that experience, Ash would be better guarded for psychic type attacks, so it would level out. Don't get me wrong, Monferno would still take some damage, just not as much as if it were still a Chimchar. So with that, we move on to the second battle as Byron sends in his Steelix. This is where our next change is going to happen. Normally Ash would recall Monferno and send in Weasel, which ends up getting sacked in the process. But here, Ash will leave in Monferno, as it really hasn't had as much damage as it did in the original. And I have to be honest here, this battle is over pretty quick. You see, Chimchar still won originally, even after taking heavy damage. But here, it's now Monferno that is almost at full health, and also, it has access to the fighting type, so the advantage is solely in Monferno's court. But don't get me wrong, it still takes some damage, as Ash gets a little overconfident after the one-sided battle with Bronzor. This leaves Monferno open for a few Iron Tails, before it's able to close out the battle with a combo of Mach Punch and Flame Wheel. This just leaves Byron with one last Pokemon, and Ash knows exactly who it is: Bastiodon. Ash tries to end the battle quick as he knows Monferno doesn't have the endurance left to pull off a hat trick. So he goes big with Flamethrower. In an ironic twist of fate, Ash loses the battle to the very same move he beat Rorik with, Metal Burst. Monferno is down, and Bastiodon has barely taken any damage. But not to worry, Ash still has 2 Pokemon. Will he need them? Let's find out. It's here that the next change to our story takes place, when Ash sends in his second Pokemon to battle, Gabite. Now guys, I had some serious thoughts about this gym battle, and I'm just going to say it. Byron really isn't that menacing. With the changes we've made to Ash's team and the extra training he's undertaken, there's just no way Gabite conceivably loses here. With moves like Rock Smash, Dig, and its newly learned Fire Fang, not to mention its trump card Draco Meteor, Bastiodon just doesn't stand a chance, no matter how good its defense is. Gabite has 2 4 times weak moves against it. I just can't think of a believable way that Ash would have to resort to a third Pokemon. So Ash takes this battle with Gabite, earning him the Mind Badge. Now, if Ash had to use a third Pokemon, he did call Professor Oak to have Bastiodon on standby. And you may think, Ronan, wouldn't Ash want to use Bastiodon against Byron to test which one is better? And I think the answer would normally be yes. But with Ash wanting to have all of his Pokemon at the same amount of training, I think he would want to use the other ones first before going with the higher level Bastiodon. So, with our 6th badge firmly in our grasp, let's move on to the final leg of this part. So, the group decides to head to Snowpoint City and the site of the 7th badge of the Sinnoh region. There are a few things that will take place during their travels here. First, they stop by to see Barry on Iron Island. Then, while they were there, they end up running into Team Galactic. This is important for one major reason, because they are using the items that are located on the island and the monument to scan the Sinnoh region, and more importantly, scan Mount Coronet looking for the Spear Pillar. Unfortunately, because Ash gets involved, they end up failing with the help of Riley and his ace Pokemon, Lucario. Now on to the next episode, another one Gabites the Dust. In this episode, we would have seen Dawn earn her 4th contest ribbon from the Choco Town contest. But there's a problem. Ash enters this contest as well. You remember what we said before about how Ash was getting better? Well, this is where it starts to show. Ash ends up making it to the finals with Spiritomb, and Dawn, being a little bit overconfident, takes for granted the fact that Ash has actually been leveling up and is now equal to her in the contest scene. And because of her overconfidence, Dawn ends up losing in this one. This costs her her 4th ribbon, and Ash Ash has actually earned his first ribbon in the Sinnoh region. Ash actually feels a little bit guilty about this. He didn't really want to prevent Dawn from entering the Grand Festival, but at the same time, his competitive spirit got the best of him. While Dawn, on the other hand, has to come to terms with the fact that Ash is no longer a training partner. He's now a rival in her contest scene. As Ash ends up entering a Pokeringer contest with Staravia, and he ends up battling Paul and his Honchkrow in the finals. In order to beat Paul's Honchkrow, Ash's Staravia ends up evolving into a Staraptor to edge out Paul's Honchkrow for the win. Our second to last episode is the Lonely Snover. I'm going to be honest with you guys here. This is going to be a quick one. We're going to have Ash's final catch of the Sinnoh region here with Snover. Now there is one problem that we have to address. What do we do with Snover? Do we send him to Professor Oak, or does Ash add him to the team? Well, Ash is actually going to make the decision to add it to the team and send Spiritomb back to Professor Oak. At this point, he's feeling since he won a contest with Spiritomb, he's managed to bond with it, so wouldn't mind spending some time away from Ash. But little does he know, this is going to come back to haunt him in a very bad way later on. Now in the final episode for the grand finale of this part, we have old rivals, new tricks. We see Dawn entering the Strawtown contest in hopes of obtaining her 4th ribbon, since she lost the last one to Ash. But there's a problem. Her old rival Kenny is here. While Ash has decided to sit back out of this one because he kind of feels bad that he took the last one from Dawn, Kenny, on the other hand, is out for his next ribbon. And it really plays a big part that Dawn is struggling with her confidence after she lost the last one to Ash. And it shows here, because Kenny's able to beat her in the finals, earning his 4th contest ribbon. And then we move into our final event for this part. The next movie, Giratina and the Sky Warrior. Now, why did I wait this long to introduce this movie? Well, the reason is simple. Toward the end of this movie, we see that there's a lot of snow and glaciers around, and it is very mountainous, as well as a lot of ice-type Pokemon, and even a Regigigas. I think that it fits well that it is in the area south of Snowpoint City, just north of Mount Coronet. So, with that being said, the story is still the same. Giratina hunting down Dialga because it invaded its dimension, a shaman gets involved, and the Sky Warrior is obsessed with the distortion world. But what we're going to add here is that after the events of Alamos Town, Team Galactic has been monitoring the energy that was given off on that day to see if it would happen again. And much to their leader's delight, they were able to track every bit of the event. They end up finding something else out as well. There is another source of energy coming from beyond the voids of space and time. It is faint, but it is growing much stronger each time another portal is opened by Dialga or Giratina. The events end as usual with the Sky Warrior learning his lesson about what he did was wrong, and Giratina going off to look for Dialga for some reason. But the main thing here is now Team Galactic has its sights set on something they feel has valuable data. The ship of the Sky Warrior, Zero. Even though it can no longer fly, its onboard recorders have valuable information on the altercation between Giratina and Dialga. Not to mention that interesting technology that can open portals between dimensions. Now, with the next phase of Team Galactic's plans unfolding, we will end this part with Cynthia arriving in Alamos Town, following up with why Palkia and Dialga were there doing battle. And that's all we have for part 3 of What If Ash won the Sinnoh League. How do you guys feel about this part? How do you feel about the gym battles that Ash has had in this one? How do you guys feel about his last catch of the Sinnoh region, Snover? How do you feel about Ash finally actually taking a win from Dawn in a contest? And of course, how do you feel about the changes that I made with Giratina and the Sky Warrior to include the fact that Team Plasma is now in the picture and they know what happened with Giratina? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to interact more with me, don't forget to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter. And if you want to support me any further, head over to my Patreon. Just $5 a month gets you 1 week early access to all of my videos. These awesome people have already donated, so I can continue to bring you the content that you love. The links for all of these are in the description below. Anyway, I'm Ronin Charizard, and I'll see you in the next video.